Okay, all right, let's bring this up. Okay, good morning, everybody. V'imnimna over alo samad al damreyecha. That what we had seen. First of all, I hope everyone had a nice weekend and all that jazz. Uh, okay, so one of the halachas we had seen that you have good morning. You have an obligation to save someone's life if you see them drowning or in any other way, their life is in danger. And if you fail to do so, then you violate the negative commandment of lo samad al dam re'echa. So here in the Biurim, Rav Stern says v'yesh la'ayin. He says one of the things we have to look into is mahadin. What will be the halacha? Now we're on page Kuf Tzadi. Mahadin im nimna velo hitzilo. What would be the din if you fail to save him? Ach libasof hu nitzal al yedei acher. But then afterwards, the guy was saved by somebody else. In other words, you see a guy drowning, and you're petrified of jumping in, and so you pretend you didn't see anything, and then someone else jumps in to save him. Hayim avar al lo sa'amod. Have you still violated the mitzvah, or can you say that guy's action retroactively removed the prohibition of lo samod from you? V'ra'isi b'sefer Hatzalos Nefashos Perak Aleph Sifkat Hey. There's actually a sefer called Hatzalat Nefashot, probably like one of these compendiums of all of the halachas having to do with life saving. Denota lomar misvara de'im b'poyal hitziluhu acherim o sha'ala biyado lahatzil asmo de'eno over. He says, the author of that sefer opines that if the guy's life was saved, or he saved himself, or some other way his life was saved, so then retroactively you're not over on lo samod. Ulam lanias daiti daverzet sarachian. He says, but that's not so clear to me. He says, Dihine legabe halav de lifnei iver lo sitein michshol, matzinu shadanu bo ha'achronim ma'ihi yadinim nasan lefanav michshol, acha iver lo nichshol bo. There's an interesting parallel, in halacha. The Torah says, do not place a stumbling block in front of a blind person, right? Which means, that can be taken as literally as you want, but it's also figurative. I cannot cause another person to stumble. So let's say I deliberately want this guy to fail. So I give him poor business advice. I give him poor investment advice. So I'm in violation of lifnei iver lo sitein michshol. But what if he doesn't trip on the stumbling block? What if he doesn't take my advice? Have I still violated the prohibition? The ayin b'stei chemed, etc. Shehevi deharav yad malachi dan bazeh echa shahoshit kos yain lenazir v'hanazir lo shasa osa. So one of the classic examples of the Gemara is I know a guy's a nazir, and I give him a glass of wine. Okay. Me nema, and the nazir ends up not drinking the glass of wine. So on the one hand, I did something to cause him to stumble, to violate the law, and he ended up not drinking it. Me nema keven shelo nichshal beisser al yedei ha'oshata hilo mikri su machshil o dilma b'hoshata gufa afar lifnei iver. So that's the question: was a guy over on lifnei iver by just giving him the glass of wine? Or is it only if he drank it, then the guy was over? Because of the hachi mistavra, the anasina kapid rachmana v'harei avar amemra de rachmana. And he writes the Sefer Yad Malachi that by the very act, the malicious act of giving this guy the glass of wine, the example in the Gemara is giving it to a nazir. What if I give it to an alcoholic? I give him a glass of wine, right? And then he ends up not drinking it. So does that mean that I'm off the hook? No, of course not. The fact that I did something malicious or harmful means that I've violated the Isser of Lifnei Iver, even if in the end it turns out not to have caused any harm. V'hevi hochacha lidvarav, u'v'steichemet sham hevi shitos tepligi al hayat malachi, And the Sdei Chemed brings other opinions that disagree with the Yad Malachi. And then he writes at the end, he says, B'zeh halashon, halamadata, d'shleimim v'chein rabim nokti kedas harav Yad Malachi, da'av shelo asa hala esa iser, oiver hagore mishum v'lifnei iver lo sitein michshol. He says, you see, therefore, even though that there are those who disagree with the Yad Malachi, but many side with him and say that you are still over on these los lifnei iver. V'chein das maran chavos, I don't know who that is. The Sefer Chaim Umelech, Gamarav Chatan Sofer Hevi Sveiko Shel Yad Malachi, Upshita Lemi Mashmos Hemshech HaKosav Dover Lifnei Iver Midi Oraisa. And that's the conclusion of the Sdei Chemed. That it seems like the consensus in his opinion is that you are over. And then he brings another opinion from this other Sefer of the Maram Shik, who's a student of the Chassam Sofer. And he says, Al Kopana Muchach Lefianir Disl Lifnei Hu Beini Mover Hamakabel Avera Olo, Miu Be'emes Lo Edenaf Kamina Darian and Kaimelan Deino Lo Canal. But the question is, what's the practical difference? Because you don't get Malkus for Lifnei Iver. So is there a practical difference? Ve'isr Belav Hachiisa Kamosher Kasafta Dafilu Balu Yado Basar Tle B'Makom Chazir Tzarech Slicha. So he basically says that it doesn't really, there's no practical difference. Even, what you did was usher no matter what. And I'm just going to skip the brackets. He says, Ulafiza nira pashut delashita sanal, the sphere lay dover lifnei iver, who adin in lo samal dam re'echa hadin kain, dim nimna velo hitzilo afshu hu nitzali de acher mikol makam hu avar. And based on those opinions that say that you're still over on lifnei iver, even if the guy ended up not stumbling, the same thing would be true. That you're over on lo samadol dam re'echa, even if the guy did not end up drowning and end up saving himself. You still were in violation. In other words, God knows what you did or what you failed to do. And therefore you need to seek heavenly forgiveness. Ordinarily, the efshar ledamot nidon didan lidin aveda. We could also argue that this is like failing to return lost objects. The cost of Harambam Perik Yud Aleph the Gezela Halacha Aleph, the Haroa Avedas Yisrael V'Nisalim Mimena V'Hinicha, over below Sase Shenemar Losira Shorachicha V'Yisalamte Mehem Uvitil Mitzvah Saseh. The Rambam writes in the laws of returning lost objects that if you see your friend's ox, for example, wandering, and you just ignore, and you don't do what the Torah requires you to do, which is to retrieve the ox and make sure that it gets back to your friend, then you have automatically violated the prohibition of return, or the mitzvah aseh of you shall surely return a lost object to your neighbor. The implication of the language there is that, let's say the owner later found the ox, but I failed to do what I needed to do to return it. So it seems that I'm still over. O sha'acher hechzir lo. Mikol makom hu shenisale mimena avar alo sa'aseh va'aseh. Imkein mistaver du adivinim done. And therefore it makes sense to say that the same thing is true over here. Da'af shechaveiro nitzal al yedei acher. Mikol makom hu shenimna v'lo hitzilo avar alo sa'amod. So that's basically, again, another proof that even if the guy ends up having his life saved by someone else, I was still in violation because I failed to do what I needed to do. Okay, Od yesh lahayir midin ma'akeh. Another good proof would be from the law of making a parapet. You know that the Torah says that if you have a flat roof that has access to it, you're obligated to make a parapet around the roof. And the cost of Harambam, the Chol Haminiach Gago B'li Ma'akeh, Bitel Mitzvah Sasevi over Alosasa. And the Rambam writes that just failing to put a parapet around your roof makes you automatically in violation of that mitzvah, regardless of if anyone fell off the roof or not. You're not in violation just because someone falls off the roof. You're in violation by failing to do what you need to do in order to prevent people from falling. Shenamar v'losasim damim b'veisecha. Because of haminchas chinuch mitzvah tavkuf memvav, the bechol rega over al halav v'haasei v'av she'achar kach asamake mikol makom lo tikin mashav l'mafreya. The minchas chinuch even makes a point of saying that if every moment that you don't make a parapet, you're in violation, and even if a month later you end up building a parapet, you have not rectified that month of time that you didn't have a parapet on your roof. Because every moment that you didn't make that parapet, you were in violation. That indicates that even if no one falls off your roof, you're still in violation. The hagam shechavero nitzal besof mimaves mikol makom hol v'hu lo itzilo aver alo sasa. And that's the conclusion of this lengthy discussion, is that the point is that even if the guy's life ended up being saved, Baruch Hashem, no one died, but you froze, you had the opportunity to save his life and you didn't, you are in violation of lo samad al dam re'echa. Make good with God, I guess is what he's basically saying.
On the opportunity, you're not being actually over something. You missed out on the privilege of doing a mitzvah.
Right, but this is not only a mitzvah saseh, this is a mitzvah lo saseh as well. Lo ta'amod al dam re'echa. And also the Makeh also has a mitzvah lo saseh. V'lo sasim damim beveitecha ki yipol hanofel mimenu. Do not place blood in your house.
Cover the wells. Maybe different reasons for that, but also when we dig a hole, we need to cover the hole as well to protect this kind of accident.
Yeah, it's the same halacha that you're not allowed to have an open well. It's also an isser of creating a hazard. Right. You can't go back.
Even though nothing happened.
So just like, basically the Minchas Chinuch is saying, FYI, next Yom Kippur, you make sure you do tshuva for that month. Is essentially what he's saying. In other words, don't think you're such a tzaddik because you put up a makkah, you still have to atone for the month that you delayed. Okay, that's really all he's saying. And it's more of it's not really, I can't say it's purely academic. It's letting us know that that there are certain things that you still have to do tshuva for, even though you rectified the problem. It's like, this is a common discussion, for example, in the mitzvah of bris milah, right? So I didn't circumcise my child on the 8th day. Okay, so I can make up for it. Or let's say my parents didn't circumcise me, so I can make up for it when I become an adult and I circumcise myself. But yes, is it true that every day that went by, the parents or I were in violation before I circumcised? Yeah. Okay, so you've got to do tshuva for that. But that's really the only ramification. All's well that ends well, I guess is what you would say. It doesn't affect the kids. No. The Torah says that she's not allowed to get married. He's not an Arel, an uncircumcised male is not allowed to marry. But if he does marry, I don't think it doesn't affect the status of the kids, at least their halachic status. Yeah. No, the kiddushin is tofes. I think it's a mitzvah lo saseh, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Okay, let me just make sure we've done everything that we were supposed to do. I think I see one more likutim here. there's one that we didn't do. The choser v'nifra mimenu. So the Rav Shulchan Aruch had said that even if it costs you money to save this guy's life, you still have an obligation to do so, but you can collect from him afterwards. So he says, Dafka b'chi hagavna, shehamatzu lo haya nitzrach lahatzala, rak lahatzilat chavero levado. Right? Only in a situation where you didn't need to save yourself and your friend was in need of being saved. So there we say that if it costs you money to save him, you can send him a bill for the cost. But let's say you needed to save yourself and your friend. Okay, so you're on a sinking ship, and it's going to cost a huge amount of money to hire a helicopter to come and save you. So you call the helicopter service, and they come and they save you, and they save your friend as well because he's on the sinking ship. Okay, so so in that situation, the other person whose life is being saved does not have to pay you, surprisingly enough, because you got to save yourself anyway. So you're not losing anything by saving him. Okay. So then he says, Mihu imhat so'an nitrabe ba'avuro chayav l'shalem chelko. But if the cost is increased by saving him, so then he has to pay for his portion. B'chol zeh im yorad mitchila lahatzilat atzmo al yedei zeh hitzil gam et chavero. And that's only if you first are making an effort to save yourself and you end up saving your friend in the process. Aval im mi'ikara yarad al dat shnehem chayav hasheni litein et chalko. But if your initial effort is to save the both of you, with the helicopter example, so then the other guy has to pay his fair share. And you basically split the bill for the helicopter. In other words, if you call the helicopter not realizing there was anyone else on the boat, and the helicopter comes, and then the guy says, wait, take me too. So then it could be that he doesn't have to pay his share because you've already ordered the helicopter and you were fully prepared to pay. But if when the boat is sinking, you say, hey, listen, the only way we're going to get saved is if we call a helicopter. The guy says, okay, go ahead. So he has to pay. He's got to pay half of whatever the cost is. That's only fair. Okay. I once had a situation where I landed in England. This is going back years. I was in my 20s. And I was going to a very, very religious neighborhood in London. And this very religious Jew said, oh, you're going there anyway. Can I get a ride with you? I said, sure. Come on in. We'll share the ride. And then when it came time to pay, he didn't want to pay. And it was very expensive. So I said to him, well, what did you think? You thought I was just going to pay for you because you're from a Yid and you don't have to share in the pay? I go, what is this? Hey, so anyway, so he coughed it up. Yeah. Like he thought, I don't know what he thought. I thought maybe it was like.
I guess he's just saying you were going there anyway, so it didn't cost anything more. I mean, that kind of rationale. But in the case of saving someone, if the other person can't afford it and it doesn't cost you any more.
A second. Sorry, Paul.
Sorry, no, that's okay. I missed what was going on.
No, Moish was chastising me for demanding him to give his fair share.
Well, I'm just thinking that, I mean, in this case, obviously it's a financial transaction and why shouldn't he pay? But on the sinking ship or whatever it is, if the person can't afford to pay, then I presume that you would just take him along anyway if it doesn't cost you anything more, and just leave it at that because you're saving a life.
Yeah, I would presume so. I would presume so. I mean, no one's going to be that cold-hearted to say, well, if you can't. I mean, there is that principle of zen nehenev v'zeh chaser. If it doesn't end up costing you any additional money, because you are going to pay for it all anyway, and then another guy wants the benefit of it, so then we say zen nehenev v'zeh chaser. He's benefiting and you don't lose anything by it. So what's the big deal? But that's only when you started the salvation process independently, and then he comes along afterwards, right? So, like, in other words, you hopped on the helicopter, and then there's another guy floating down like a half a mile away on another piece of debris from the shipwreck, and you say, okay, we'll pick him up too. Okay, so there maybe the argument is that zen enev v'zeh chaser. But if the two of you, if you start on the life-saving effort at the same time with this other guy, then obviously he has to pay his fair share. Yeah,
Okay,
and that's why it's analogous to me to the cab ride. It's not like the guy. No, he asked if he could come and share the ride. I said, sure. You're going to the same place. Come with us if you'd like. He says, can I come along with you? I said, sure, of course you can come along. We didn't talk money, but it's clear that monetarily, if two people are going to share a cab, the other guy can't say, well, you're going there anyway. You were going to pay for your cab anyway. So zen enev v'zeh chaser, right? Everyone's got an angle.
On that basis, no one should pay TTC fare because the bus is traveling that way.
That's right. Anyway. Hey, listen, you're going anyway, buddy. Why should I have to pay you? Okay. Yeah.
What do you pay for your luggage?
Yeah.
For the coffee.
Oh my gosh. Listen, I got news for you. There are many people who daven in our shul, and their attitude is, well, shul's open anyways. Why do I have to pay? You know? Well, that's right. He's doing us. We should be paying him because he helps make the minyan. There you go. All right. It's a great argument.
Would they say that if they went to a movie? I mean, the movie's playing anyway.
That's right. That's right.
If there's not a per cost for the individual, then you can always try and take that attitude.
That's right. That's right. Okay. All right. Let's go on to the next halacha sipches.
Sorry to have brought that memory back, Rabbi. It seems like it's impacted you.
It's traumatized me for life. Now you know why I'm so tzalachas. Okay.
There's no couch in the room, I presume, Rabbi.
What's that?
There's no couch in the room.
There's no couch in the room. No, but my friends are helping me through this. Yes. All right. V'chein im shama nochrim o mosrim v'chashvim alav ra'a o tomnim lo pach. So let's say you hear that certain non-Jews, certain ruffians, or people who are mosrim, could even be Jews, have an evil intent. Let's say you know that someone is hatching a plot against your friend, or they are waiting in hiding to ensnare him, to entrap him. Velo gila azno v'hodio, and you fail to reveal the plot to your friend. Oshiyada ba'anas shehu ba'al chavero, or let's say you know that there is a very powerful person who is about to attack your friend. And you have the ability to appease the guy and to calm him down. You say, listen, you're going to beat up my friend. Do me a favor. Here's a few $100s. Let's just call it a day. And you have the ability to pull out money from your wallet and just pay him off so that you can save your friend from getting beaten up or worse. Biglal Chavero, Ulahasir Masha Belibo, below Fiyaso. And so you have the ability to do that, but you don't. You fail to do so. The Chayotze Bidvar Melu, or any other kind of situation like that where you have the ability to save your friend from harm and you fail to do so, over alo samad al dam reyacha. In all of those instances, you violated the negative commandment, do not stand by your brother's blood. Va'afilu Yisrael ba'al averos. And this is true even if the Jew whose life is in question is a bad guy. Let's say he deserves to get beaten up by the mafia. In other words, the mafia is coming after him, not because the mafia have no justification. He took out a loan, or he had a gambling debt, and now Guido's coming to break his legs. So the question is, like, he deserves it, from their standpoint, he didn't pay up. But they may bring him to an inch of his life, or they may end up killing him. So if you have the ability to pay them off, then you're obligated to do so. And even though he's a lowlife, kagon mumar lechol nevelos l'teyava. Let's say, for their example, this guy is a person who eats treif just because he's not a frum guy, and he's just out of weakness. He just does lots of nasty things. Mitzvah lahatzilo va'asur lamud al dama. You still have an obligation to save him, and you're not allowed to just stand by and watch him get geschmettered. Umikol makom ein chiyuv lahotzi mamon al hatzalaso. But the only thing that you wouldn't be obligated to do is to spend sums of your own money in order to save him in that situation if he's a mumar, if he's a sinner. Shekevin shehu mumar ladavar echad min haTorah eno bichlal damrei echad. And here he says something that we have to qualify based on what we know about. Remember, we learned a long time ago that the law today of mumar does not largely apply to most people because of Tinok Shenishba and other considerations that we went through in the Chazon Ish. If you remember, we spent some time about that several months ago. But that maybe over a year ago, that we talked about this whole concept. But he says basically that if a person is a person who doesn't observe the Torah, even in only one area, even if it's only one mitzvah, like he's Shomer Shabbos, but he eats at McDonald's. Okay, so in that situation, you would not be obligated, if he truly is a mumar, you would not be obligated to spend money because he's not called damrei echa. It's not your friend's, it's not your fellow's blood. It's a stranger's blood. And you also don't have an obligation to provide parnasa for someone who's outside of of the religious community. Ella toreach levado below hotzoas mama. You're only obligated to exert effort in order to save him. You're just not obligated to spend money. V'chayavim litroach bishvil hatzolas gufo, v'afilu bishvil hatzolas mamono. And therefore, you, in any case, no matter who the person is, good, bad, or ugly, you are obligated to exert effort to save them, to save their physical safety, and even if it's just to save their finances. And therefore, why is that? Mishum shenamar lechol avedas achicha, that you have an obligation to return all lost objects. V'darshu chachamim lerabos avedas hamumar l'teyavim. And there, the Gemara says that not only do you have to return lost objects that belong to an upstanding Jew, but you even have an obligation to return lost objects to a lapsed Jew, a Jew who is what we would call a mumar. The Shama Namar v'hashevosolo, v'lo Namar v'hashevotalo. So we'll finish this halacha in Yirtzeh Hashem tomorrow. But there seems to be like this, there's like three levels, right? There's the level of a full-fledged Jew who's a Torah-abiding Jew. There's a lapsed Jew. We haven't yet talked about the obligation to a non-Jew. I know Ron is very concerned about this halacha when it comes to saving non-Jews. So we will get to that, Ron. And let me wish you all a good day. We'll continue.
Ron's probably also interested in secular Jews,
Yes,
as we all
right.
are, I guess.
That's right. That's right.
I don't discriminate.
That's right. Amen. Okay. Ron,
The last minion is at
sent you a WhatsApp, Ron.
Sorry, Robert. The last minion's at 9 this morning, right?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
Okay. Ron, I sent you a WhatsApp. Just want to make sure you got it. Okay.
Okay,
Have a
thanks a
good
lot.
day, everybody.
Have a good day,
Thank
gentlemen.
you. Okay, take care.